Okay, welcome to part 3. This is the galactic alignment, the great quickening. All of these things are one and the same. It's part of the same process that we're tuning into here on this series. And if you didn't hear the first 2 parts of the show or the series, I recommend tuning into that and turning that on as soon as possible before hearing this. Or if you're more into the astrology, fine. I would suggest hearing the whole thing in order to understand what I've already talked about that might be important information for you. There's some things people know, some other people don't know. It's all very relative. I would suggest, though, check those out, see where you're at. So I was just getting into how the Galactic Eclipse in 2012 is affirmed through astrology. And again, the Mayan calendar is galactic creation pulses, and the planets are entrained by these galactic vibrations, as are we. But the planets are blatant, and they don't have the diversity and free will that humans do to run off in 100,050 directions. So that it's a very clear template of macro cycle energy and where it's at and where we're at in it here on the Earth. Now, so in the galactic alignment era, which is when the Earth's solstice, winter solstice point, which is very key for the Earth, is aligned with the sun and the center of the galaxy the closest, and this relates to the apex or culmination point of the precession of the equinoxes, where we transfer between Pisces, the age of Pisces, and the age of Aquarius. Now, this is, as I was mentioning in the previous takes, it takes a couple of 100 years on either side of the apex between ages. The cusp is a couple of 100 years long on each side. So this has been in process through the entire age of the technological revolution. And as Aquarius affirms, which is about quantum leaps of evolution, especially technological. Now, certain technologies, natural technologies, aren't necessarily harmful for the environment, etc., but nonetheless still ruled as technologies. So, good gardening is a form of a technology, actually. So, let's look at the planetary cycles now. Again, I was just speaking of, I have this magnet board which shows you, or shows me, depends on who's tuning into it and what they know about it. These planets are on magnets, and I'm able to navigate cycles this way very easily right beside me. At 2012, 12:21, 2012, 11:11 a.m. Universal Time, GMT. The closest alignment of our winter solstice, the energy of the Earth aligned with the Sun to the highest level, the beginning of every year, but also when the Sun is the closest to the center of the galaxy. So this is a galactic eclipse on a solstice. That's why that date is so important. And there are multiple dates that are extremely important. Multiple. And part of how we know what's going to happen is the previous dates and what occurred on those dates, because they show us what the cycle is doing. It's in process of these macro field evolutionary movements. And so in the 60s, Pluto aligned with Uranus in Virgo. And that was the beginning of one of the most important cycles that we see occurring to culminate in 2012. But first of all, it's good to mention that all of the planets, all the outer planets, which move very slowly, are all on the cusps of signs in 2012. Now, that, when you look at it in the sense of everything being interconnected and cyclic, which of course it is, we see that them all switching signs in, and it is the last signs of the zodiac, the importance of this part of the cycle. The odds of very slow moving planets all being on the edge of signs at that time is almost incomprehensible. It's like winning 20 bingos in the same day. It's a ridiculous thing to call a coincidence. It's definitely a coincidence. It shows the holography, the holographic nature of the interconnectedness of these natural macro field galactic processes. So the cycle's culminating. Now it's the most obvious when we look at it in this sense. So again, the primary trigger for us, what can we use now? What I could talk for 10 million years about what I have dialed into, but what is the most helpful for us right now? I would say, besides knowing everything I've said, on the planetary cycle side or standpoint, reference point, the Uranus aligning with Pluto in the 60s, opposite to Saturn and Chiron. Now this created an awakening, and it was a seed event. It was a collective macro level seed event. That means it's triggering our awareness to move into this new direction, which is culminating as these planets square and reverse positions, which has almost completely occurred now at 2012. So when there's a seed event and then there's a release, and that's the square. And that is what's occurring right now, and it's precise in 2012. So this is very, very, very key. Now Uranus, the planet Uranus, which in Greek means lightning, the planet Uranus, or Uranus, is actually spinning on its axis on a 90-degree angle from the rest of the planets, which generally spin on a horizontal plane. Uranus is spinning this way as if it was rolling on an invisible track around the sun. And that shows its eccentric behavior and its 90-degree shifting, which is, again, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11. It's 11 itself, as Uranus rules Aquarius, the 11th sign. So this is the age of change on macro, 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 macro. There isn't a word for that. That's why I'm saying 5 of them. Macro to the power of 5, at least. Just in this sense of what we're talking about right now. So that electrical planet Uranus, because it spins vertically, it creates a very high electrical charge, which again is why it's related to lightning. It's called lightning. It creates sudden and massive shifts through electricity, through vertical input. Again, information, galactic information, coming into the physical world to merge with the horizontal field. The magnetic field, so the electrical input vertical weaving into the horizontal magnetic field. Now that's going on all the time, but when there's an activation point like this, it's increased phenomenally and accordingly. Different cycles have different amounts. Different people respond at different times and in different ways. Again, that's where we need our own personal reading to understand those things. But again, right now we're looking at macro collective field. So Uranus and Pluto, because Pluto represents transformation of all forms. It's ruled by Scorpio, the sign of transformation, rebirth. It says, how did it go halfway through the cycle? Okay, let's transform what we need to transform in order to complete the process. And that is rebirth. So everything I said in the first part of the series about 1111, releasing the outmoded and integrating a higher level of order. And freedom and equality, and again, a love illusion. So Pluto now being, again, representing transformation and the power to transmute. The glyph itself represents spirit rising above matter and the persona, and the present form. Uranus represents spirit pushing matter and the persona to a higher level. Again, very well affirmed. Now, Uranus and Pluto aligned in Virgo. Virgo is the sign of collective understanding. Also personal understanding, but in this sense we're looking at collective understanding because they're outer planets which affect the collective more. So that is, whereas personal inner planets move very quickly, we all have our own very unique energies that way. The outer planets move very slowly and affect us more collectively. That's a whole other section, but there's a good summary. So a collective movement in what we think we're doing, Virgo. It's our understanding. There's Pisces is on the other side of the zodiac. It's the other extreme expression of Virgo. It's the axis of understanding. So whereas Pisces is intuitive and has a sense of what to do, Virgo figures out a way to do it, takes some courses, and masters what it's doing. So it's application and mystical knowing, we might say. Our heart song calling and application. So when Uranus and Pluto, the evolutionary, revolutionary, transforming energy aligned in the sign of collective ideas and modalities and understanding, this created a realm shift of understanding. And this is where there is very, very big collective cultural growth explosion, we might say. People started to dial into natural law again and say, you know, we are not victims. Life can be beautiful. And we had a peace through culture movement. Now that was a seed event. Seed events trigger something. We don't know how to do it yet. We try, and quite often certain things persist. Certain things, it's like sticking your toe in and jumping back and taking some time to figure out, am I going to get in? When am I going to get in? What do I need to do to prepare for this? Now, that time for us to have processed all this information and energy and for it to process itself with us in it is exact in 2012. That's when, now that Saturn and Uranus have switched positions in the sky exactly, Chiron has come around to be where it was before, and Pluto has now reached the exact midpoint between the two. Three. And Saturn, okay, so simplify. This creates a T-square which represents transformation through unity consciousness. Uranus entered Aries right when these major global movements started occurring. The internet just went off the wall with information about how people are hoarding power and that it's not fair and that this is out of line with natural law and cannot sustain itself, and the sooner we change, the less problems and suffering that will occur. So it's like the astrology says, hey, there's a cliff coming, turn the car. If you're not headed toward the cliff, it will say everybody's doing well. This is where it's at. It's saying turn the car full on. And that means tune into your higher knowing, learn more information, tune into your heart, tune into your intuition, let go of outmoded things that you really don't feel good about it, because your emotional body is the language of the spirit talking to the mind. And it says, hey, if this doesn't feel good, there's a reason for it. It could be mental, it could be conditioning, but more likely when we're feeling it in our heart, it is our spirit telling us. So we'll have to go into the next section here, running out of time again. So please stay tuned for the next section coming right up, and I'm probably be able to finish up on that section. So thanks for tuning in again.